My beloved child. Stop for a moment. Do not rush past these words as though they arrived by accident. This message is a work of fiction, created to inspire reflection and hope, yet perhaps it will remind you of something your heart has quietly known all along. Last night, while the world around you slept and countless homes were wrapped in silence, a conversation unfolded behind a closed door. It was an ordinary room with ordinary people, but the emotions inside it were anything but ordinary. Your person's brother spoke your name when no one expected him to. The room grew quiet. Faces turned. What had begun as a casual conversation suddenly became something far deeper. No one planned for your name to be mentioned. No one expected a single sentence to change the direction of the night. Yet that is exactly what happened. You have spent so much time wondering whether anyone truly understands your heart. There have been moments when you questioned your own worth because silence surrounded you. You mistook unanswered questions for rejection and delays for permanent endings. But what you could not see was that unseen conversations were taking place while you continued living your ordinary life. Sometimes the greatest changes begin where your eyes cannot reach. You often believe that if something important were happening, you would be the first to know. Yet life rarely unfolds that way. Seeds grow beneath the soil before anyone sees the first green leaf. Dawn begins long before the sun appears above the horizon. In the same way, hearts often begin changing before words are ever spoken aloud. Last night was one of those moments. Your person's brother leaned back in his chair as the conversation drifted from everyday matters into something more personal. At first, your name was only mentioned in passing. Someone laughed softly. Another person shrugged. It seemed like the discussion would move on. Then he quietly said something no one expected. I don't think you've understood them. The room became still. No one interrupted. No one smiled. For the first time that evening, every voice disappeared into silence. The people sitting around him looked at one another, uncertain of what he meant. One of them asked why he would say such a thing. He took a slow breath. Everyone keeps judging them by what they've been through, he said. But no one has stopped to notice who they really are. Those words lingered in the air. Sometimes truth does not arrive with loud applause. Sometimes it enters quietly, carrying enough weight to silence an entire room. In this fictional story, imagine heaven watching that moment, not to control every choice, but as a witness to hearts beginning to soften. Because compassion often begins with one brave voice. Your person's brother continued. You think they're difficult because they've become quiet, he said. I think they've become quiet because they've had to carry too much without anyone asking how they really feel. No one answered. Someone lowered their eyes. Another person folded their hands together. The atmosphere changed. It was no longer a conversation about opinions. It became a conversation about understanding. Far away, you knew nothing about this imagined scene. You were simply living your life, carrying questions that seemed to have no answers. Yet this story reminds us that people sometimes speak well of us when we least expect it, and that kindness can appear in rooms we have never entered. Perhaps you have felt forgotten. Perhaps you have believed your story has already been decided by people who misunderstood you. But hearts are capable of changing. Opinions are capable of changing. Even a single conversation can begin to reshape what people believe. The brother looked around the room again. I've watched them more closely than you have, he continued. They don't pretend to be perfect. They simply keep standing back up every time life knocks them down. His words carried no anger. Only honesty. Honesty has a remarkable way of reaching places arguments never can. One by one, the people around the table began remembering moments they had ignored before. Quiet acts of kindness. Small sacrifices. Times when your intentions had been misunderstood. The picture they carried of you slowly began to change. Not because someone forced them. Because someone finally spoke with fairness. That is the power of truth. Truth does not always arrive first. But when it arrives, it has a way of remaining. Still, not everyone in that room agreed. One voice finally broke the silence. If that's true, someone asked, then why has everything become so complicated? The question lingered like distant thunder before rain. Your person's brother did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the window, where the darkness outside reflected everyone sitting inside. Then he quietly smiled. The real question, he said, isn't why things became complicated. The real question is whether we've been looking at the wrong story this entire time. At that moment, every heart in the room seemed to lean closer. Because they sensed he was about to reveal something he had never shared before. And what he chose to say next would leave everyone speechless. Here's the English version of part 2 of the same fictional spiritual story. My beloved child. The silence that settled over the room was no longer ordinary. It was the kind of silence that appears when people stop speaking and begin listening to their own hearts. Your person's brother remained still for a long moment. His eyes drifted toward the darkness beyond the window, as though he wasn't looking at the night itself, but at memories that had quietly followed him for years. Then he finally spoke. You've all heard their story, he said softly, but none of you have ever listened to their silence. No one answered. The words lingered in the room, heavier than anyone expected. One person finally broke the silence. How can you be so sure? He gave a faint smile before replying. Because I've seen them when no one else was watching. The atmosphere shifted. His voice carried no anger, only quiet conviction. You judged them by moments that were easy to misunderstand. I watched the moments no one noticed. You saw their smile. I saw the nights they carried pain without asking anyone to carry it for them. You saw their strength. I saw how much courage it took just to keep going. Several people lowered their eyes. One elderly woman suddenly remembered a small act of kindness you had shown years ago. At the time, no one thought it mattered. No one thanked you. No one even mentioned it again. Yet now, that forgotten memory returned with unexpected clarity. Your person's brother continued. Every person makes mistakes. But not everyone chooses to grow from them. They did. The room remained silent. The opinions that had once sounded so certain began to feel uncertain. Someone quietly admitted. Maybe. We never truly understood them. No one argued. Sometimes one honest confession changes the direction of an entire conversation. In this fictional spiritual story, it felt as though heaven itself was watching, not forcing anyone's heart to change, but witnessing compassion slowly replacing judgment. That is how healing often begins. Not with miracles that shake the earth, but with truth that softens a heart. Your person's brother reached into his pocket and carefully unfolded an old photograph. It was simple. Nothing extraordinary appeared in it. Yet he stared at it for several moments before speaking again. Whenever I look at this picture, he whispered, I remember one thing. Everyone leaned forward. What is it? Someone asked. He looked at the photograph one last time before answering. I remember someone who endured far more than any of us realized. And somehow never allowed pain to become cruelty. The room fell completely silent. People who had once spoken with confidence now questioned everything they thought they knew. One by one, memories surfaced. Moments when your kindness had been overlooked. Times when your intentions had been misunderstood. Sacrifices that no one had recognized until now. The image they carried of you slowly began to change. Not because anyone demanded it. Because honesty had finally entered the room. Then, just as the conversation seemed ready to end, a soft knock echoed at the front door. Everyone looked up. Another knock followed. This one was firmer. Your person's brother slowly stood. Without saying a word, he walked toward the door while every pair of eyes followed him. He opened it. Standing outside was someone carrying a sealed envelope. The messenger handed it to him without saying much. He accepted it, thanked them quietly, and closed the door. The room watched as he carefully opened the envelope. His expression changed. First came surprise. Then concern. Then something else. Something no one could quite understand. He read the contents again, slower this time. When he finally looked up, his voice had become almost a whisper. Everything we believed, he said, may have been only part of the story. The room froze. What does it say? Someone asked anxiously. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he folded the paper, held it close for a moment, and took a slow breath. Then he looked around the room and quietly said, "If this message is true, then tonight changes everything." No one spoke. No one moved. Every heart waited for what he would reveal next. And the secret hidden inside that envelope was about to uncover a truth no one in that room had ever imagined. My beloved child. No one in the room dared to speak. The envelope remained in your person's brother's hands, yet it seemed heavier than paper alone. Every heartbeat echoed through the silence as though even time had paused to hear what would come next. He unfolded the letter one final time. His eyes moved slowly across each line. Then he closed them for a brief moment. When he finally looked up, there was no fear in his expression. Only understanding. "You've all been asking the wrong question," he said quietly. "You've been asking whether they deserve another chance." He paused. "But the real question is whether we've truly seen who they are." The room remained motionless. One man folded his arms. Another lowered his head. Someone whispered, "What do you mean?" Your person's brother gently placed the letter on the table. "This message isn't about proving them perfect. It's about reminding us that we judged a chapter as if it were the whole story." His words settled over everyone like the first light before sunrise. In this fictional spiritual story, imagine heaven watching not to force hearts, but to remind them that mercy often begins where certainty ends. The letter contained no accusations. No demands. No dramatic confession. Instead, it described small moments that no one had ever noticed. It spoke of quiet sacrifices. Of prayers offered for people who never knew they were being prayed for. Of kindness given without expecting recognition. Of forgiveness extended long before anyone asked for it. The room slowly realized something. The strongest evidence of a person's character is often hidden inside the things they never tell anyone. An elderly woman reached for the letter with trembling hands. She read a few lines. Tears gathered in her eyes. "I remember this," she whispered. "I thought no one knew." Another person stepped closer. "So, all this time?" Your person's brother nodded. "Yes. They carried far more than we ever imagined." The conversation that had once been filled with opinions was now filled with reflection. No one seemed interested in winning an argument anymore. They wanted to understand. Someone quietly admitted, "I owe them an apology." Another voice answered, "So do I." The room that had begun the evening with doubt was slowly becoming a place of humility. Not because every question had been answered. Because every heart had begun asking better questions. Then your person's brother smiled for the first time that night. "It isn't weakness to admit we were wrong. It's the beginning of wisdom." His words lingered long after he finished speaking. Outside, the wind brushed gently against the windows. The night felt strangely peaceful. As though something invisible had shifted. Not the circumstances. Not the past. But the hearts of the people inside that room. Then something unexpected happened. Your person's brother turned the letter over. There was handwriting on the back. No one had noticed it before. It was only one sentence. He read it silently. His eyes widened. Someone immediately asked, "What does it say?" He looked around the room before answering. "It says." He stopped. Almost as if he wanted everyone to understand the weight of the words before hearing them. It says that sometimes the person you think needs saving is the very person heaven has been using to quietly strengthen everyone else. Silence. No one could deny what had happened that night. They had entered the conversation believing they understood you. They were leaving with the realization that they had only seen a fraction of your journey. In this fictional tale, let this be the reminder your own heart carries. Never measure your worth by the opinions formed before your whole story is known. Some people will misunderstand your silence. Others will eventually recognize your courage. Neither changes who you truly are. Your value does not begin when someone notices it. It has always existed. The night drew to a close. The chairs were pushed back. The lights grew dim. One by one, everyone left the room, quieter than when they had entered. Only your person's brother remained. He folded the letter carefully and slipped it back into the envelope. Before leaving, he looked toward the empty doorway and softly said, "They may never know this conversation happened tonight. But I hope one day they discover that more people believed in them than they ever realized." Then he turned off the light. The room disappeared into darkness. Yet something brighter remained. Hope. Not because every mystery had been solved, but because one honest voice had changed the course of an entire conversation, and perhaps, the course of several hearts. And somewhere beyond what human eyes could see, a new chapter was quietly waiting to begin.